with you in a permit-required confined space. My love makes me shout, scream, and yell in elation. My joy is so outspoken, I use hearing conservation. Our passion will soar, such sparks it emits. We may soon need some hot work permits. Our love would not sputter, our cells would not clash. Our love would electrify like a deadly arc flash. The heat of our love grows and will never be less. If things get any hotter, we may suffer heat stress. Our love will not struggle, our lives will not mire, our love will explode like a combustible dust fire. On this Valentine's Day, I pledge you all this. Just be sure to love safely, and all will be bliss. So happy Valentine's Day. I thought that was really cute. So we will get started today. Anybody have anything they want to share before we get started? I do have one thing to share. We would like to congratulate Holly and Kason Corporation for winning the Safety Focus of the Year Award for the Manitowoc County Chamber. Sheboygan will be announcing theirs next week, I think. So with further ado, I will introduce to you Kelly Bubolz, who will give us a OSHA update today.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I know some of you from a previous meeting. I have a cold. I'm trying to keep my distance from everybody, but I'm really glad that we have the microphone or you not hear me today. I apologize. I'm going to have to keep taking drinks of water. Figured out yesterday, water's really important when you take Sudafed because not only does it dry your nasals, it dries everything else in your throat. So when you're trying to talk and have no water, it's really difficult. So we'll come back and get the water. What I wanted to hit on today, there's so much that's changed in 2013. Our fiscal year is completely different from last year. We've got a lot of stuff that's on the agenda. I want to show you guys how to actually get into the OSHA agenda so you can look that up yourself. We want to go over what the new emphasis programs are. If I click this, we can tell you where we're at. We want to go over what the new regulations are. Has everybody by now, by a show of hands, heard what GHS is at least? There you go, that's where we're trying to be. So what it is, we're going to go over the new regulation for GHS. Let's go over the inspection data from last year. It's not scary. What we did is I compared it all the way back to 2007. So we went 2008 when this administration started, and went to now, because everybody's kind of got this misconception that everything changed and it went haywire, and really it's not. We've stayed kind of right around the same, except for the penalties, which people probably know. And then the other thing I wanted to go over are the new resources that you can use, and what we have available out of Appleton, Milwaukee, Eau Claire, and Madison. The Injury and Illness Prevention Program. That's your I2P2 that everyone's been hearing about. It's been written up in a couple different magazines. It's Dr. Michael's way to do job site hazard recognition. What it is for the smaller companies that don't actually have the written safety and health programs, because in our written programs, we have JHAs, we do our job site hazard recognition. But smaller firms, they're not actually doing that. He wants to give them a base so that before the employees are doing a task, they've actually worked through that task so they know, do I need PPE, what do I need, so that they're not in the task, realize they need something, stop and go get that. So the I2P2 is what he's trying to get to go nationwide. So Injury and Illness Prevention Program, you'll see it as I2P2 or as Injury and Illness Prevention Program. It's the same exact thing. Confined space and construction. How many do we have that are in construction that are here today? Okay, then we don't have to have too many that are scared. Confined space and construction, we don't have that. We use the confined space standard for general industry. Kind of like what we were doing with the crane standard. The crane standard for construction was new last year. We've gone through a year. It's actually in litigation right now because there's a couple of things they're trying to point out with it that aren't working the way that they wanted to within the standard. And OSHA doesn't write new standards very often. So when they do, there is usually that grace period that takes before the standard is actually where everybody's happy with it. If you're happy with the OSHA standards. But they're pretty basic. The standards haven't changed in 40 years. They don't do a lot of new things to them. So the confined space and construction, that's still right now on the board for our agenda. I'll show you how to get to the Fed agenda in a sec. Silica, they're looking at reducing the numbers, so you can look at our PELs. Same thing with beryllium. Dr. Michaels has talked about bringing some of our stuff into where we need to be with AIHA and AGISC. Our numbers haven't been changed since the 70s, so everybody else has got these great numbers, and we're like where you won't want to be. You really want to have protection at the OSHA numbers, but so we're going to bring those around. He's trying, and those are the first two that he's starting with. Infectious disease. With the CDC, OSHA and Department of Labor, they're working hand in hand. There's a lot that we have, you know, we look at bloodborne pathogens, that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as infectious disease goes. So OSHA's doing a lot of background with that, and they're sponsoring grants, the Susan Hardwood grants, to go over more with infectious disease so that we can get a handle on MRSA and some of the other things that are going around. We have a nursing home. I'm going to take a bunch of drinks, I'm sorry. We have a nursing home emphasis program this year. That's brand new, started right at the end of last year. So when we talk infectious disease, that along with ergonomics is a big part of the emphasis program for nursing homes. The modernizing of record keeping, this is one, it's kind of going to be like GHS. Remember we said GHS was coming for like the last 9 years. We keep saying, it's coming, it's coming. Well, it finally came. The modernization of record keeping, it's putting everything electronic, so you don't have to keep a paper 300 log. Everybody's got the software already for your 300s. It's OSHA accepting that. They're coming into this entry, they're going, oh, okay, everybody's on computers, we can do this now. So when it'll actually happen, I'm not sure, but that is on the agenda, and that's something that they're working towards accepting. They want to get a template that everything is on, that they can agree upon. So it'll be a little bit. This is how the rulemaking process actually works. When we get a rule, or when we have a standard that starts, you have the preliminary work. Somebody's come up with something. There's a lot of accidents. We've had a lot of dust explosions. There's something we need to do because we're having fatalities and there's explosions. So what we do is we have a proposed rulemaking session. Everybody kind of powwows together and they go, okay, this is a really good idea. When they get past that and they get the rule actually developed, where they want it to be is just in the baby stage. It's not where it actually goes to. They put it to the small business. Everybody gets to have comments in on it, and it gets changed around quite a bit. They develop the final rule. We're about 3 years into the process. Once we get the final rule developed, then they still have to publicate it. So when they develop it, that's still where people are able to send in their remarks and send in their comments on it. And all of this happened with that crane standard, but not until it was actually implemented did we find out that they had a problem with the boom and the extension and how we were talking about the 100-foot rule with the crane boom. Since we don't have a lot of construction, I won't go into it because it won't matter to you guys. And then the implementation process. Normally we give 90 to 120 days once it's implemented. Crane standard's the newest one, so the rigging and the signalman, that was right off the bat. They had 60 to 90 days to do that. As far as the crane certification for the operators, we went out 4 years. So there's different stages that they had to come into compliance with within those 4 years. When you're looking at something new, if you go to regsinfo.gov, that's where everything's published. If you go to regsinfo.gov, you'll go to Department of Labor, highlight OSHA, and you're going to get this screen that's going to come up. And that's going to give you all of the items that they're looking at changing the rules on. Walking working surfaces is a real big one. Confined space and construction is where they're going with some of the ones that they're trying to push through quicker. I don't know that the confined space and construction is actually going to go through, but they're really pushing it hard. You can look and see where she's at. But infectious diseases is right at the end there too. What our emphasis programs are for this year and how they've changed. We do have some that remain the same. Powered industrial vehicles for general industry and for construction. That's not something that will get OSHA into your facility, but if they come into your facility for a complaint or on a strategic, on an SST, on a targeting program, Powered industrial vehicles are something that that compliance officer has to look at because it's required under the emphasis program. So again, they can't stop just because of a powered industrial vehicle, but if they stop for something else, powered industrial vehicles are going to be looked at. With it being winter for construction, they're looking at that all the more. With carbon monoxide, they're looking at making carbon monoxide monitoring an emphasis program. The shanty on Winnebago, it's something that employees really need to understand that exposure isn't something you're going to smell and know that you've had too much. You're going to get really, really tired, fall asleep, and then you're not going to, somebody else will find you. So they're looking at making carbon monoxide also an emphasis program. It has not come yet, but it is in the process. They have it written out. Lead and silica. The site-specific targeting, that's still for amputations and it's your moderate. That hasn't changed any. The companies that are on it have changed. I'm going to show you a site that you can go to see what the companies are that are actually on the SST. It's pretty slick. It won't tell you if those are going to be inspected, but you know how we put everything into a pool and then it's so many out of that pool that get chosen? This will give you the pool, the name of the companies that are actually on the SST for 2013. Combustible dust, we're still hitting that really hard. We're trying to do a lot of outreach on combustible dust. In our area here, going into Manitowoc and up towards Menominee, Marinette, we have quite a bit of the wood pellets, the pellet companies that have compounded the wood dust into the wood pellets for the burning stoves. We have to work on making sure that they have those baghouses outside and not inside. A lot of times they're using renovated buildings, and those baghouses are inside, so when they do have a spark or something happens and the explosions, they're actually having the whole facility instead of having it contained outside. So combustible dust is something that we're still training hard on. The paper mills, they all kind of have that down because we've been pushing for so long, but we've got a lot of newer industries that are still having to grasp on what combustible dust is. Chemical processing plants and process safety management, they're looking at that real hard because we've had the releases. Texas has had a really bad year last year, and we had the same thing with Oklahoma. So when different things occur, like the BP, I apologize, I'm really sorry. But I get dry really easy. So when BP has their releases, when the different companies have their chemical releases, they look at that process safety management and go, are they looking at this? Do they know which valves they need to turn off when they're trying to get to a certain section of their area? So you're going to see part of a targeting is going to be PSM. It's going to be process safety management to make sure that those are all in line. Flavorings, they haven't changed. Those are the same. Primary metals. Grain handling we've had for about 4 years now. So grain handling and combustible dust, they kind of go hand in hand. Nursing homes, you're going to see that that's also going to tie in with workplace violence, everyone. OSHA has never addressed workplace violence. They're addressing workplace violence. We've had a lot of CNAs, not in our region, but if you go to the New England region is where they're pulling this from, but it goes nationwide once they find out. We have CNAs that are working in the assisted living facilities, and there's been so many injuries and they've not been responding to that. They'll have the injuries, and then they'll have re-injuries, and then they'll have other people that are hurt, and they still haven't come up with a way to do this safely. And be it where they have to have 2 people go in, maybe they have to have a special wing, maybe they have to have locked areas, however they have to do it, they have to come up with a safe patient handling and a way to keep their employees safe. There were, I think it was actually a mental rehabilitation day use facility. And what had happened is there had been 80 workplace violence activities in 3 months. So in 90 days, they had 80 attacks on their staff. So that's how OSHA gets involved. It takes them all of that before OSHA even says, okay, here we are. Nobody reported it. They were taking it just as workers' comp. And it was the workers' comp that got a hold of OSHA and said, this is what we're having. And we're having so many of these called in, and so many of these are getting reported. You need to really do something. So what they did is we went in on a referral, And then they started looking nationwide at this, and they went, this is a national problem. We have an aging workforce. We have people that are going into assisted living. Alzheimer's and some dementia are some of the larger problems that we have right now. How are we dealing with this, and how are we keeping our employees safe? We have safe patient handling in place to keep our patients safe, and how our patients have to be treated. But how are we keeping our employees safe? So what OSHA's done is we don't have a standard, and Congress has not opened up the act. What they're doing with the workplace violence is when they go out and they respond, they'll write it up as a 5A1. So the general duty clause, and they're not just doing it with nursing homes. Nursing home is where they're addressing it. But if we get something from the newspaper or a news agency or a police department reports in on a retail facility, Milwaukee, they did the beauty shop where we had the shooting at the beauty shop. That was a workplace violence that got written up as a 5A1. So they are responding to that. So where we haven't had anything with workplace violence this next year, you're going to start to see that the cases that are publicized, we are going to go out there, we are starting the investigations on the workplace violence. So hopefully once that gets recognized, we can reduce those too and come up with some solutions. But it normally takes an emphasis program before money gets put towards something where they generate the actual solutions. Dairy farms in Wisconsin. It was started last year. We didn't know if it was going to continue on. We didn't know if there was a need for it. The emphasis program put out there the data that we had received from BLS and that they had received from workers' comp, and it said that we were having a lot of not just skid steer injuries, but we were having herdsman injuries, crushing injuries. We went ahead, the emphasis program went out. What they found on the emphasis program was that we had a lot of the dairy, and they did not go to small dairies. The dairies that they addressed were all over 10 employees, outside of family, but they were larger than that. They were 50 employees or more, so they did not, it's not directed at the small family farm, but we don't have a lot of small family farms in Wisconsin anymore. We have larger farms that have many, many employees. These farms are under OSHA coverage. They have to have the same programs that you guys have to have. So when we went out, their electrical was so far backdated. There are programs out there for them to update their electrical, but we found a lot of electrical violations, paperwork violations as far as programming, unmarked confined space. They did not know which pits were confined spaces. They didn't know that all of their pits were confined spaces, and we had some problems. We did a lot of outreach and a lot of training, but that program has been redone for this year, so we do have emphasis program for dairy again in Wisconsin. It has not gone region or national yet. It is still just in Wisconsin, but it has been increased. We are at more than 12 inspections per office, where last year we only did 3 dairies per office. Appleton actually did 9 because we had fatalities and different things that actually happened last year during that emphasis program. But that has been increased, so there's going to be 12 dairies from each of the 4 offices that are going to be looked at. And shift breaking is an emphasis program also, and that's nationwide. Federal agencies are being looked at also. When we look at the high rate of Boston, it's mostly Postal Service that they're looking at for that. We joke and say postal, but no, they're having a lot of ergo injuries and a lot of repetitive motion injuries, so that's why they're investigating federal agencies. Residential construction, they've been given another extension on their LED. It's now extended through March 15, 2013. That's something that brings them into compliance with the rest of everyone else with 501(b)(13), the residential fall protection standard. They've had a lot of exemptions where they haven't had to follow that standard if they were doing other things. This takes all of that away, but with the lobbyists, they keep getting that extended. So they're still under their old standard again until March 15th. So it was rescinded last year, but they're still having, like I say, lobbying. So they're still under the March. Now they have till March 15th before they have to come into compliance. Oh, sorry. The isocyanates, it's the bed liners, the minuses, the place where what they're looking at, the spray booths, they want to make sure that everybody's following the same set of standards. we're finding the little day shops that they're not doing that for their employees. They're not having the respiratory training, they're not having the medical fit test. There's a lot of different things that have been come up, so that's why that keeps getting reiterated. So that's more for the bedliners is the isocyanates. I went over workplace violence. It's not just in the nursing homes. We'll go out if a worker files a complaint. If we have 3 or more, so same that everything else is, 3 or more are hospitalized, we have a fatality. But if we have a worker complaint, we will go out for workplace violence. If we have a news article or a news release that says that there was a shooting in Green Bay or there was something that happened in Sheboygan and it's at a workplace, we will respond to that and open an investigation based on that workplace violence referral. GHS, the newest thing that OSHA's had out there, March 26, 2012. The GHS, everybody kind of seems to have had a little bit of a grasp on it. I think it's going to be great. It hasn't really changed 1200. What it's done is it's made HazCom a lot easier for the employees to understand. The container labeling has changed. The material safety data sheets. That 16 section that GHS has regulated, that's how everything's going to be from now on the SDS, makes it so clear for employees. You can have that laminated, put somewhere. Section 4 will always be first aid. Section 8 will always be PPE. We don't have to search through the document to find what we want. We just have to look at the section and we can go straight to that section and get our answers. Employee training, that's what needs to be completed at the end of this year. What that is just the training on the new sections of the SDS and the training on the labels. If you're looking under the new standard and you're looking under to where you want to find things for the rule, this is just kind of giving you the layout of the organization, where the rule is and the effective dates and where to find those. It broke them out where I can show you separate. The hazard classification, it's mostly for the manufacturers and the importers. Do we have any importers or manufacturers of chemicals? Okay, so with you guys, you have a bit more to go on than most of the industry as far as keeping up with dates and getting the labels and the SDSs out to everybody. As far as determining the class of the chemicals that you're sending out. For the majority, those are already going to be decided for you. When the manufacturer sends you, they're already going to tell you the hazard classifications that they're in. So you'll just have to go off of their data. The thing that's changed that's really confusing to most of we're lower people in OSHA, we're not the DC-sized people in OSHA, so from the people that are at the office level and the compliance staff and myself and outreach, the part that we find baffling is where they've changed from, we've always worked with the NFPA Diamond and the HMIS. Those numbers have switched. Do you remember when 0 and 1 were really, really good and there was no hazard there? GHS changed that and made that, this is really bad stuff now if it's a 1. So that I think is going to be important training for the employees. There's nothing that says you can't use the NFPA Diamond, but if you're using that, you still have to use. GHS you have to use. This is an optional. So you're going to have both of those, and those are going to be conflicting information. So where you go with that and where you go with that HMIS data is up to you guys, but what they've done is they've taken that and they've taken that hazard classification and they've swapped that around. So now where 1 we used to, you'd always look at 1 and go, oh, that's all right, you doesn't really have too much up with it. Now that 1 is danger, hazard, really bad stuff, 4 is, all right. So it's going to be a learning process and it's going to be something to go back and forth on. That's the biggest change for GHS that I saw. And we haven't, and like I said, we're too low in that scheme to figure it out. We're not high enough up there, but somebody decided that that was a really good thing not to stay into where we were with the NFPA and the HMIS that have been there forever. So they've gone to this. And GHS has been around. Canada's had it, Mexico's had it, Europe's had it. We've just now come in, and they've always used this hazard classification, so that's why this was accepted by us when we accepted into it. But it's just going to be a learning process, and it's going to be a matter of maybe not using those diamonds, or if you're going to use the diamonds, make sure your hazard classifications match the GHS. When we're looking at the labels, and you kind of want to see where you're at for what needs to be on the label, the pictogram, it's got to have the red diamond around it. They have them. They don't help me an awful lot. I can tell you the flammable, but some of them are really out. I see it what it is, and I don't know what the hazard is by the picture. So it's just going to be a matter of looking at the posters and really getting them down, because there's some, I'll show you, but there's some that, does everybody kind of understand the pictograms? Have you guys seen all of them? Yeah, there's some that I can't tell what the hazard is, but good thing I'm not in the field anymore. But, so one is danger. They want to make sure that you have the signal word out there, so you've got to have the one out there, you've got to have the danger, then you've got to have the hazard statement saying what is dangerous. So in this case, they're going extremely flammable, liquid, and vapor. When you get to, they're going to the 4, that's the one saying it's not so bad. So that's just your little warning label saying it's a combustible liquid. So it's the absolute opposite of where we were with the NFPA diamond. The written program, like I said, 1200 has not changed greatly. Very minor changes to the 1200. So that stayed the same. What they've done is the GHS that's been added to it is really just a labeling and the SDS with the 16 sections. Some little terminology edits, but it's really 1200 has not changed for you. That's the standard that you know and love, and that's the way it still is for training and what have you. With the workplace labeling system, and I talk ahead of myself on the slides, what they're looking at is they want to make sure that you're consistent. So if you have the NFPA label on there, those numbers need to match the GHS. Or if you're going to have the NFPA on there, it can't be on your GHS label, it'll have to be separate. Now when it's separate, then it's your NFPA numbers. That's fine, you can keep using those same numbers, but the label, that's the one that's got to have the GHS numbers on it. The 1 is bad, 4 is okay. If you have both of those, I think it would be really, really confusing, but OSHA can't tell you to not use the one that you've used for so long. All they can say is that can't be part of your new label. Your new label has to have the GHS data. It's got to follow the GHS scheme. So here's an example of what the labels are. The product identifier, your signal word, the hazard statement that's going to kind of read out to you what the hazard is, your pictogram, which is supposed to be good for English second language or those that aren't fluent with the English language, the precautionary statement, stay back or whatever, your name, address, telephone number of the chemical manufacturer, so that you don't have to look at the SDS. It's right there on the label. You should be able to get everything from the label that you need. The pictogram, what it's supposed to be is a symbol of or a graphic of the element of what that hazard is. They have 8 of them that are designated. The environmental one, that's not an OSHA one, that's not designated by OSHA. But when you look at it, the health hazard, gas cylinder, can you tell the corrosive? I have a hard time with that one. The flame over the circle for the oxidizer, I think that's kind of confusing. I would think flammable, but the skull and crossbones is kind of still straight out. But these are the pictograms. So these, when you look at them, these are the ones that they're saying have to go on your labels for your hazard. Again, the manufacturers are going to be the ones that are going to classify that hazard before it gets to you normally. You can't have a blank pictogram. You know how on our NFPA diagram sometimes we can have the blanks? With GHS, there's no blanks. So you can't have a blank. It has to have a pictogram in it. There's 16 sections to the new SDS. They're the same as material safety data sheet, exactly the same, except it's one template that they all follow from now on. So an SDS is your same stuff, they just drop the M on it for whatever reason. So a safety data sheet is the same as a material safety data sheet. The 16 sections, 12 through 15, those are not done by OSHA, they're not mandatory. So when we talk about 1 through 11 and then 16 are the sections that we go to. I can't use 4 for an example because it's always going to be first aid. Every time you look at an SDS, you go to section 4, you're going to find first aid. Every time you go to section 8, it's going to tell you what PPE is required. That stuff will never change. When the employees, and OSHA comes out and they go, hey, can you get me the SDS for this? And the employee kind of goes, okay, and they grab the book. Now that they find the SDS, which is going to be a lot easier because you're not going to have so many of them this time, they'll be able to open it up. If he has PPE, he should be able to look at something and go, oh, section 8. Okay, I look at section 8, there's PPE. Before, OSHA would ask the PPE of the employee, and the employee would go, 40 pages here, how do I find what PPE is? I know I'm supposed to look at it, and I know it's called an SDS, but I don't know how to read these. This will make it simple. It should make it easier to train too. I would think that if you have set sections on the SDS sheets, and a lot of them have already come out. Have you guys seen the new sheets? Have a lot of them come out to you guys already? Yes? No? Okay, they're going to start. Some of ours to the office have already come out to us for our gases and that we've been getting in. They're really nice and they're delineated. The sections are really sectionated so you can see with bold lines where you're going with them. I don't think they're going to be hard to train on at all. This is a sample of one of the SDSs that we just kind of pulled and how it's laid out so that you just get a sample of what the SDSs are going to be. Does anybody have any questions on GHS and the new SDSs that are out there? Remember, the training that's required of the employees is just on the new labels and the format of the SDS. Because remember, all those SDSs aren't going to be to you until 2015. They have a transitional period to get all of those SDSs redone and into the new format. So we have to train on the new format, so as those SDSs and those new labels are coming in, our employees understand what the new labeling system is and what it means for the chemicals. They also have to understand what that new section system is so that they know how to read that new SDS. But that's it, and that's December 30th. That's December 2013. So you want to make sure that you do what? You document that you've trained. With OSHA, if you don't have documentation, it's really hard to prove that you've trained that employee. The employee will go, yeah, I received training, and they're going to go, well, when did you get it? And if they're not able to come up with an answer, you're going to be able to go, no, Richard, you were trained in November, blah, blah. And that's what OSHA is. If they have to see it, they talk about paper reduction. It's all about if you've done something, write it down, have it signed, have something that you can show that you've done that training. Because if you don't have documentation of that training being completed, it's going to be really hard to prove to that OSHA investigator that you did that training. I say this, I was an investigator for 10 years before I came into outreach 3 years ago. So we're government employees, we're legal repentant, and it says reduction of paper, but what do we ask for? We ask for paper, and we say, can you show us when you did this or what you did? So if you have it on the computer, you can do it that way and just show them, this is our training docs, this is what we have, that'll be good enough. But just make sure you document when you've done that training. The enforcement of the directives. What a directive is, and I hope everybody knows this, a directive is what the compliance officer needs to follow on those emphasis programs. So OSHA will issue an emphasis program to the industry. It'll say, we have an industry emphasis program for amputations. What will come out will be the directive on amputations. You can read these directives, and what they are is, it's what the compliance officer needs to follow when they come into your facility to do an inspection for amputations. And it'll tell them what they need to look at, how they need to enter the facility, the documentation that they need to gather. You can go onto the OSHA website. You can go on to www.osha.gov and look under directives. And you'll find the directive for each of the emphasis programs that OSHA has there. So that if one of those emphasis programs applies to your industry, read what the directive is so you know when that inspection happens, how it's to be conducted, and what they're going to be looking at. What programs are they going to be pulling? What are they going to be observing? That directive will tell you that. How is OSHA trending? What are the things that have been going on? Like I said, when I took the numbers, I took them from back in 2007, so I took before the industry started, and I did them up and through last year. But when you look, 2010 is when OSHA implemented the new penalty structure. So when we look at the graphs, remember 2010 is when the penalty structure changed and the penalty for serious was raised from $5,000 to $7,000. And they changed the way that they do repeat penalties. A repeat now goes back 5 years versus the 3 years that it normally did. We also had an increase in significant cases, about 30% higher than what it was in 2010. A significant case is a case that OSHA has that the penalty is over $100,000. They're also more aggressive in using the repeat violation. What they're doing is this, it's a new software that the government implemented. It links all of the OSHA offices, not just federal offices, not just Wisconsin offices. It links nationwide. So we have all the state plans, so if you work in Michigan or Minnesota, it used to be that we never had any of that data. We only had your data for Wisconsin. Now the system links everything OSHA nationwide. So when they pull up your company name, no matter if you've done work in the South Dakotas or if you've done work here in Wisconsin and Illinois, it pulls your information for everywhere. So now when they look at a repeat violation for a fall, you may have had a fall here 7 years ago and it's not a repeat, but you had one in South Dakota 3 years ago. So it is a repeat. So they're doing that more aggressively. You're going to see that that's really, really increased. And that's why it's increased. They're able to pull data from everywhere instead of just their one local state to that one agency. Inspections, they're looking at an increase. We conducted, I think, 40,000, so many numbers last year. They're looking at 41,000 for this year. It's not a great increase, but it's about 6% higher than where they were. I don't know how that'll go with the sequential or whatever they call it in the budget and that, so we have to look and see. But the numbers that they've put out for fiscal year 2013 is they're looking at about 41,000 inspections to be conducted nationwide. The top cited for general industry was HAZCOM. It's normally up there in the top 3 or 4. It was number 1 last year. Respiratory protection. When you have a respiratory protection program and you're issuing out the respirators, make sure that they're getting the physicals. That it's not just somebody in the office saying, oh, okay, you're good for it here. They have to have that documentation. They have to have that physical. Your lockout, tagout programs. Your audits of your lockout, tagout programs. You can't pick one thing and say that's good for the next 60 things that you're auditing. When you audit, you have to audit the entire program. We're having that with the VPP company right now. What national office did is I don't know if everybody's heard about VPP. That's OSHA's Voluntary Protection Program. That's being audited by the Government Auditing Office, or however you want to say that office. Anyway, they're auditing that process. And what they're looking at is, for a VPP company that we have, on their lockout tagout program, they take an example of one of their pieces of equipment and they do 1/3 of those every year, so that in 3 years they've done their entire program. The standard says you need to do the entire program every year. So what they did is they said, well, this company that's supposed to be your best of the best, they're not following your standard. That's citable, but they don't have that. So when they come out they're looking at your lockout tagout program. They're going to see where it is, are you following it, but they're also going to look at how are you auditing your lockout tagout program. Electrical wiring methods, we talked about that with the dairy. It's all over. It's the way that you have things run through the panels. Powered industrial vehicles, this is in both general industry and when you get down to PPE, again, PPE is the last measure. We want to engineer out first, we want to do administrative, then PPE is the last result, so that the employee doesn't have to think. If we can do it without PPE, that's how you want to do it, because that can just engineer out that safety hazard. But if you have to use PPE, make sure they're trained on the PPE, and then it's readily available for them. If they lose it, they know where they can go to get an extra set. Construction. Scaffolding was really big for construction this last year. They had gone to a lot of scissors lifts and aerial lifts, but when you look at the scissors lifts, they're under the scaffolding standard. And what we were finding is the the scissors lifts were being used, but what they were doing is they were getting to a certain height and the scissors lift wasn't tall enough. So we were getting guys that were standing on the guardrails of the scissors lift to do the job that they had to do. And that'd be great if it didn't throw off your center of gravity and the balance on the piece of equipment, because when these guys, the electricians, they have a lot of gear on them because they're working and they've got all their tools. When they stand on that one side, it's a tipping motion. And we in our area had 2 of those last year, just in Region 5. But that was nationwide. There were guys standing on 5-gallon buckets. I'm just going over what the actual citations were, but that's why scaffolding was up there. It wasn't actually our scaffolds. It was a lot of the scissors lifts that were being used inappropriately. Fall protection's up there. It's normally up there for construction. Ladders, something I didn't hit on before. The fall protection emphasis program, the national emphasis program on falls, now includes ladders. When you go back to your facility, if you take nothing back from this update, take back that OSHA, when they come out to your facility, are going to audit your ladder program. If you have ladders that are out there and they're not tagged out and they're crappy ladders, it's a violation. Get rid of them. You're not going to fix an aluminum ladder. Just get rid of it and get a new ladder. If the guys are using ladders, make sure they're using them appropriately. Step ladders need to be used as step ladders. They need to be opened up and secured in place. They can't be leaned up against the wall. If OSHA's out there and you got maintenance doing something and they're not doing it appropriately, they got that ladder leaned up because it's only a 2-second fix, that's a citation. And it's something that hadn't been looked at, but what they did is they looked at fall hazards. Don't you know 30% of the fall hazards and the fall accidents that are reported are from ladders? So they put ladders personally onto that fall emphasis program. So when you look at the OSHA website and look at the emphasis program for falls, you'll see it now addresses ladders. Go back and check your ladder program. Make sure you're inspecting the ladders. Make sure any ladders that you have that are out of service have a red out of service tag, because with this emphasis program, that compliance officer can now observe your ladders and your ladder program, not just the ones that are in use. So make sure you're checking your ladders. Check the feet on the ladders. Go over with if your industry, go over with all of your maintenance and everybody that has use of the ladder to make sure that they're using them appropriately. If there's anything damaged on them, they let you know so you can take them out of service. Does everybody get the whole ladder thing? It's something that's been written up really, really heavily in the last month and a half, and it only just came out a month and a half ago, but that was something, it's a new thing for compliance officers that they can actually, used to be they had to be in plain view to address a ladder. Now that it's part of the emphasis program, they can pull your ladder program to see what you have for ladders. And the training, you want to make sure that the training that you've done for your employees on ladders that use them, that it's documented, so that that maintenance crew, whatever you have gone through ladders so they understand stick ladders, extension ladders, and the use of them, when they need to be secured, when they need to be 3 foot over. I'm not going to go over ladder training, but just so you get the gist of it, you have to really look at your ladder programs. So since we look at January 1st to now, we've had 6 fatalities in Region 5. This is not nationwide, this is Region 5. This is where you guys live. The one that we have for Wisconsin was actually a fall in construction. Any questions on where we're at so far before we go into the final data for last year? Okay. Fatality investigations. When you look at 2007, we did 1,043 fatality investigations. We're down near 300. We did 768 fatalities last year. That would be a good thing. That means we're reducing the amount of fatalities that we have. Wisconsin last year, we had a really bad year as far as the Appleton office for fatalities. I don't know if it's because we have the 41 project going through and we have a lot of different things that we're going through. But in our summer, we had, I believe it was 9 fatalities from June 1st to September 31st. We had a really stretch there where it wasn't so great for Appleton. But overall, we have reduced from 2007 to 2012. The inspections that we've conducted, we came out and Secretary Solis did there's a new sheriff in town and we're really going to get after everybody and it's just going to be crazy. There's going to be lots of inspections. Y'all, it hasn't gone up but maybe 500 since 2007, so we've stayed pretty steady. We went from 39,300 to less than 41,000 inspections, so we really haven't increased that great of an amount. When you look at programmed versus unprogrammed, stayed the same the entire time. Our programmed inspections, those are our amputation inspections, our scheduled inspections, our emphasis programs, those are all programmed. The unprogrammed inspections, those are our complaints, our fatalities, things that are called in as a referral. So about 50-50 basically. When you're looking at the complaint inspections, about 23% of all the inspections that the OSHA office does are complaints. So hearsay and what it is that all of these are complaints and that we're coming out just because these employees are complaints, that's not it. Only 23% of OSHA's inspections are based on complaints. The other thing is, we've only been doing about 3% of follow-up inspections. You're going to see that in the 2013 data, that's going to jump greatly. The reason it's jumping is those 3% of inspections that have been done over these last 4 years have found that the data that the company sends in saying that the hazard is corrected is falsified. They're going out and those hazards are still existing. That would be a bad thing. If OSHA comes out and they give you 90 days to correct a hazard and you send in documentation that your hazard is corrected, granted, we don't have very many people and we don't do very many follow-up inspections, we take you at your word and believe that you've evaded. If we come out and you have not evaded, bad day. So if you send in your documentation, make sure that your hazard has been evaded and that you haven't falsified anything. What you're sending in is true. There will be more follow-ups because that data has shown that OSHA needs to do those follow-ups, that we are having a lot of data that's coming in that these things have been corrected and guarded and evaded, and the compliance officer has gone back and nothing has changed. In compliance inspections, OSHA comes out and everything is 100% fine. That's 24% of our inspections. Near a quarter of the inspections that OSHA does are great inspections. They come out to the facilities and the facilities are in compliance. We always say, no, nothing with OSHA is ever in compliance. It is. There's your documentation. 25% of our inspections almost are in compliance. So people get it. OSHA's been around for 40 years. Those standards have not changed. They're the bare minimum. We're not asking you to go above and beyond. A lot of facilities do go above and beyond, and that is phenomenal. You just have to follow the standards to be in compliance. So we do. We've averaged about a quarter of our inspections are in compliance every year. When you look at total violations issued, It's gone down by 10,000. So we're thinking OSHA's getting heavy-handed and more so. No, the violations have actually reduced. So less violations are being issued. This is the biggie though. When we look at serious violations, that stayed the same. They're still issuing about 70% are serious violations. Some are repeat above that, some are willful, some are in compliance. So about 70% are serious violations. But when that penalty changed, the dollar amount for those serious violations near doubled. So the cost per violation has almost doubled with that penalty change. Construction versus general industry. Construction guys always think they get hit harder than everybody else because they're out in the really not. It's about 50-50 between the two. And that's decided. The only reason that construction sometimes flares higher is if you have a heavy construction industry and there's a lot of building going on at that time. When compliance officers drive by and they see a fall hazard, because of the emphasis program, they can go over and open an inspection because they've observed a fall hazard. So yes, construction guys, if they're doing something wrong, they can be observed on a drive-by and come in. We're industry, we can't drive by and go, okay, I'm going to stop and look and see what's going on. If there's nothing going on, they can't. They have to have a reason to stop at your facility. But construction, as they're driving by, if they observe a hazard, they can stop and do that inspection. But really, 55% versus where we're at for industry, it's about the same. Significant cases have greatly increased. We kind of talked about the trending of the OSHA inspections. When we look at the significant cases, I think the reason it's jumped is we've had the incidences on the shore, we've had the BP, which have been huge cases. New York's had a lot of really big cases that have come out of it. Region 5, we haven't had a lot of huge developed out cases. We're more of a middle of the line region. We don't go way high on industry, but we don't go way low. We kind of keep to the middle. But nationwide, they have gone up. They've gone up to 219 significant cases. So if there's a case out there, they are developing them out. So what that means is when they come in and they see a willful violation, they're not just looking at the violation that they saw that the people just went ahead and did willfully. They're looking at programs, they're looking at training, they're looking at everything else that they add to that case to build that case up so that it is a significant case. So they'll be looking at repeat violations to develop that case out. The web page has changed. It stayed the same for about the last 3 years now, and it's really a great layout how they have it. For training, we do tailgate training sessions. They're on here. The e-tools that are on here are awesome. If you want to use fatalities, they're about 60 days behind, but you can go straight to the fatalities page, and it'll tell you all the fatalities that have happened within OSHA for that month. We do it week by week by week, but like I say, we're about 6 weeks behind in actually getting it posted. So you can go back for a certain month and you can look and see what all those fatalities were nationwide, what the incidence was, and what actually led to that fatality. Those are actually listed on the website. So they're great for training tools. If you have something that you're training on falls, you can go back and pull the fall data for those fatalities that involve falls. The other thing with the OSHA website is you can get the IMS data on any of the companies that you're bringing in. So your contractor program, how you're hiring contractors to come in and do work, you can go directly on the website, go under data and statistics, and you can plug in the establishment's name, and any OSHA inspection that they've had will come up so that you can see what their history is within OSHA. The safety and health resources that are out there, the Quick Start is really awesome. You can get a lot of training through the Quick Start, the e-tools. The OSHA Quick Takes, the weekly letters that come out through your email. The safety newsletter that we do straight from the state of Wisconsin, if that's something that you're interested in, let me know and I can send it out. Milwaukee actually holds the database for that, but we can put you guys on. We send out a newsletter. We try to do it every 4 months. And we'll do 2 general industry and 2 construction. and we'll base it on just the data of what's going on in the state of Wisconsin, so that you kind of have a heads up of what's going on around here. Is anybody on our newsletter that's here from our area? It's really good. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll send the stuff down to Milwaukee so that you guys can get on it. The outreach topics that we have are foundries. Brilliant Iron Works, Neenah Foundries, Manitowoc Gray Iron, and Wisconsin Aluminum. These foundries are part of a partnership called the Northeast Wisconsin Foundry Ergonomics Partnership. They actually developed a publication over the last 7 years that got published about 6 months ago. We finally got published. But it's ergonomic solutions in foundries. If foundries can work on ergonomics and get ergonomics together, surely everybody else can kind of come in a little bit there, because foundries are a son of a gun, and these are gray iron foundries. These are some heavy hitters, and they've really come up with some great solutions, some zero gravity tools. It's a good brochure. You can get that online. You can just pull it down online, or you can just look at it online. The other stuff that we have is we always had a construction digest, where it gave you the construction standards, it's kind of like your Cliff Notes, only it was Cliff Notes for construction industry. They now have that for general industry. So you can go on and get a general construction digest, which will kind of give you the Cliff Notes on the 1910 standard. Some of the new stuff that are out are for the beauty parlors, the hair smoothing. They also have for the nail industry, and they've got that into Korean, Tagalog, and a couple other different languages for the nail industry, for the dust. Any questions for me? Right at the end. Oh, I timed that pretty good. You got it 5 minutes. These are our offices, the phone numbers, so you guys all have the phone numbers of the different offices. I'm closest to the Sheboygan and Manitowoc. If you have training, if you have something that you want to get together with, let me know. We can come out and do training, as long as we're not doing it just for one facility. So if you have a project that's coming in, or you're getting ready to have a remodel or something, if you want to have a kickoff with those contractors, we can come in and do a kickoff session. So you can do when you're doing your pre-con meeting, have OSHA come in, and we can do 15, 20 minutes on different safety that you guys have at your facility that you want them to key into. If you just have a year or an annual safety training that you guys do at your facility, if you invite your contractors that come in, your cleaning people, whatever you have, we can come in. We just can't come in and do specialized training for one entity. As long as it's more than your facility that's there, OSHA can come in and do your safety training. So we can come in and do your consultation, we can come in and do your training. We also have WisCon, which is federally funded. They're out of Madison. They've kind of got reduced in size this last couple of years with the Wisconsin budget, but they're available, and they'll do training. They'll come out and they'll do mock OSHA inspections, and they're free. As long as you have under 250 employees, they can come out and do those inspections at no charge. Only thing they ask is that if they find a hazard while they're doing those inspections, those hazards have to be corrected. And what they're doing is they're doing the same inspection that an OSHA compliance officer would do, only they're doing it from a consultant angle, so that you'll be able to correct those hazards that they identify. They'll even go over your program, your safety and health programs. No questions. It's a big group of nothing. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions,
You said you were going to give us the website or whatever that we can see we were on that. Yes.
Yep, let's go back to that real quick. When you're on the web page, under top links, you're going to go over and you're going to go, I can't blow it up on here. When you're on the top links, you're going to go over statistics and data, and what it's going to do is it's going to tell you strategic data. What that is that's the strategic plans that we have. It's going to, when you pop that open, go to Wisconsin, and it will give you the companies in Wisconsin that have the mod rate for the hazard that they're looking at. So if you're looking under amputations, it's going to be those companies that have that mod rate greater than, I think it's 5 point, I don't want to quote it because I'm not sure what the number is, but if your mod rate is at that number or greater than the number that they're looking at for their average, then you become one of the parts of the strategic outreach. And your company could possibly be inspected because your mod rate is at that level. Where they get that at is your OSHA 300, your BLS data that's sent in every year. That's where they get those numbers at. Can we? She's going to help me show you walk through things. There you go. So you go under top links. I have to read and I go to my glasses, I apologize. Sorry. It's always hard to find something when you put yourself on the spot. So if you go under enforcement, you'll get the NEPs, which is what you want to look at. Your local emphasis programs will go by the state for your data. Right here, see where it says site-specific targeting? Bingo. So it is buried a little, so if you didn't look, you wouldn't find it. But enforcement, left side, site-specific targeting. So we have to go to the PDF. This is only PDF right now. And remember, when I say directing, it's what the code shows you. So this is their data. But this actually tells you what the site-specific targeting list is. Well, this is back from 2011. They'll have it updated. But you'll get the effective dates, where it's at, what the area offices have to look for, and then they'll have a list that they choose through. But see, it'll have the establishments. You can go through everything there. So you want to go enforcement and then site-specific targeting. And once you get into the directive, that's where you want to read through for your area. Does everybody understand that? Thank you, I forgot about that. So yeah, so it's enforcement, left-hand side, site-specific targeting. And then it'll post the new one that's good. See, this, the one that we have here is only effective through 2013. They'll have that updated as it comes, and you'll get the one that's effective through 2014. It just takes them a while to publish on. Anything else that you guys want to look at while we're on the site? The LEPs is what we were talking about earlier. You can just click on local emphasis programs. It'll bring you up to your region. Click on Region 5, which is where we're at. And if you look, we really don't have that many local emphasis programs. You've got a lot of regions that have a lot more than we do. But there's ours, and then you can pull out the document that fully explains what that LEP is about. I'm done unless you guys have anything for me. It's a little after I don't want to keep you from where you have to go. These are where the fatality reports are. And then you just click on the week that you want to look at and go by week. And the summary will kind of give you what happened. So you can use it for your data collection. And again, falling is a really big, falling. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kelly. Manitowoc Chamber members, March Forum will be taking place at Wisconsin Aluminum Foundry, so watch for information on that. Thanks for coming.
Kathy, is the boss here?
Yeah. Way over by the wall.
That should looks like accurate time. Let's meet back in the classroom about